Well, good afternoon or good morning, everybody, and welcome to this second in a series of high-level vodcasts organised by SESAR to discuss the pandemic, the crisis, and how we recover and improve ATM, and what SESAR is doing to help that to happen. These are a series of seminars designed to help promote thought, to help promote discussion. My name is Andrew Charlton from the ATM Policy Institute. We have a terrific panel today, as of course we did last time, and as we will for all the others as well, I hasten to add. I'm delighted to say that we're joined today by Marilyn Bastien, who is the Head of Aviation Sustainability at Eurocontrol. We're joined also by Mark Ami, the Vice President of Corporate Affairs, Sustainability and Environment at Airbus, and Florian Gillamé, of course, the Executive Director of SESAR, is with us as well. Today, our conversation is going to focus exclusively on issues around sustainability and what ATM innovation can do to reboot aviation sustainability. Probably just as well, that's what we're talking about, given that the people we have on the webinar are experts in aviation sustainability. Marilyn, perhaps I could start with you and ask you a sort of a general question, if you like, from the Eurocontrol perspective. How do you see where we are today, and what do you think the issues are going to be?
Okay, so first of all, good afternoon, Andrew, good afternoon, the panel, and also good afternoon to all the viewers. So yes, regarding sustainability, the challenge is even bigger now. So before the COVID crisis, we all know that sustainability was part of the priorities we have to work on. But during this COVID crisis, the situation is even more difficult now. Why? Because, you know, when we speak about sustainability, we mainly speak about CO2 emission. But we should be aware that it's not only about CO2 emission. We have also non-CO2, NOx, and we have also to speak about the ultrafine particles and also about noise. And I think that during this COVID crisis, the noise is becoming also a big issue because people got used to these more empty and quiet skies. Meaning that now we have also to face with more expectation coming from the public, from the citizen about aviation. So it's not only about CO2 and the Green Deals, it's also about noise. It's also about the different challenges around this sustainability challenge. So when we speak about sustainability, we speak also about the noise issues and emission, but also we have to speak about the social and the economic aspect. So if we look now to the people and their expectation regarding aviation, we should focus on improvement, what could be done now, but also what could be done in the future. But we need also to take into account this human factor. So how the aviation is perceived by people. And it's something on which we really need to work on. It means that we need to convince that aviation is part of the sustainable mobility solution. It should not be seen as something we should avoid, but it's part of the solution of the mobility transport.
So you say that it's, thank you, you say that it's part of the, we have to make sustainability part of the solution as opposed to part of the problem. Is that an issue, do you think, of procedures? Is it an issue of the technology? Where do we start to make it part of the solution?
We should to start at every level, in fact. So as I said, there are different solutions to work on sustainability, but when we speak about sustainability, it's not only about environment, it's also about the social and the economic aspect. So it means that we have to look at the global picture. And I think that it's the problem now. When we speak about environment, most of the time it's quite a binary picture, you know, and we should avoid this because there is no single or simple solution to sustainability. There are a lot of different challenges, compromises, trade-offs that should be discussed. And to work on this, of course, there are different solutions. I remember something that Florian said last week about the perfect flight, the green trajectories, and I fully agree on this. Now we should build back better around these green trajectories, because now we have the opportunity to change. So on one side, the COVID crisis brought some bigger expectation on the sector, it's for sure. But on the other side, this COVID crisis also gave us some breathing space where we could test different options or maybe different solutions that we didn't dare to implement before because it was too complicated because of this capacity priority. But now, it's maybe the time to be more ambitious and to test some solutions that were not able before. And now it's the time, and it's the time to convince.
Interesting. So, Mark, from the Airbus perspective, do you see the pandemic as presenting some opportunities like that, or what's the Airbus approach to to the sustainability question?
Well, good morning or good afternoon, everybody. We have now, two big challenges ahead of us. The first one is to recover from the COVID crisis. You know that the impact on aviation is really very strong. And so we need some time to recover. The level of traffic is still very low. The situation of airlines, airport, ATM services, and manufacturers is difficult, but we are doing our best to be able to recover and to keep on investing on sustainability. And by the way, at Airbus, it doesn't change the fact that we consider sustainability as a main challenge for the future. And even I have to say that we have decided to jump directly in our R&D programs to the next generation of aircraft with the ambition of being able to deliver climate neutral aircraft in the next decades, so around 2035. So sustainability is more than ever a topic for us for developing and improving the performance of our aircraft. The last generation of aircraft is already improving the situation with 20 to 25% less emissions, CO2 emission, but we are still progressing on NOx reduction. And you mentioned before noise. Our last generation of aircraft is still reducing noise by something like 15 decibels. So this is something we are used to do, to develop new technologies improving the situation. Now we know that the climate change is a urgent issue. And so we have to accelerate the developments to be able to reach the objective of the Paris Agreement. It's really a huge challenge, but we are convinced that the aviation globally, because of course it's not manufacturers, it's the whole aviation sector, and it includes ATM, can achieve progresses in the coming years to achieve the objective of the Paris Agreement. Technology is not only on improving the fuel efficiency, reducing emission. Technology is also on the ATM side, and the fact that Airbus has been partner since the beginning of the SESAR JU is because we do believe that technology on board the aircraft can also improve the operation and the ATM efficiency, and so reduce the impact of aviation on the environment. And here again, it's with more direct trajectory, with best flight profile, reducing the CO2 emissions, and with continuous descending, low noise procedures to also reduce the noise around the airports. So working together with the benefit of the new technologies, we can really improve the situation and go towards a fully sustainable aviation. And I have to say that, of course, Airbus is very focused on the 4-day trajectory project, which is to offer to the airlines the best possible trajectory. Right. We're also investing in our own technology to all of this, but we will need, of course, the ATM services, the whole European infrastructure, and then worldwide to be developed to be able to implement these new technologies for ATM.
Right. So basically, Florian, it's all down to you by the sounds of it. All you've got to do is fix that and we're good.
Yes, of course we are. So, I mean, good afternoon, everyone. Just to be clear, I don't think SESAR or ATM is a silver bullet to everything. But that's clear on the other hand, as it was clearly expressed by Mark and Marilyn, that we do have a role to play in air traffic management. I tend to use this analogy and story for all the ones who are in the aviation domain. If I buy a dishwasher, which is an A grade in terms of, environmental impact, electricity, water consumption, whatsoever, and I use it badly, always on heavy duty, half empty, and so on, I'm not going to have a great impact on the environment. And I think this is, again, probably a wrong analogy for aviation, but on the other hand, it's clear that if we have very advanced aircraft, and we know that we will have more and more in the future, and we already have with the modern fleets an incredible potential, if we don't operate those aircraft properly at the right flight level, upon the right trajectory, whether actually it is at the airport or en route, we will not deliver the relevant outcome in terms of environmental impact. So to me, this is where we really have to team up. What it's about, it's the entire ecosystem that has to get mobilized around this topic. And the second thing maybe I want to pass as a second element of this first introduction is to say that in the past we used to oppose quite a lot the different performance elements in ATM. One day the priority, and this is actually when I started my career 20 years ago, was on capacity. We had a capacity crunch. We needed more capacity in the aircraft. That's exactly how we had a discussion in the Wise Persons Group just 1 year ago in the context of the future improvement of the SES initiative. The capacity crunch again was there, but then you move inevitably to something else because of, what's happening. And today we have a clear example with the COVID. Now the focus is on different elements, such as the cost of the system, its overall performance, its ability to be resilient, and so on. So we had, through the history of aviation and ATM in particular, all those changes in terms of priority. And my plea is that we shouldn't oppose one to another one. The first thing is that if you know well enough the system, you will acknowledge that you cannot have very good trajectories, optimized trajectories, if you don't have the capacity in the airspace. So capacity and environment, first of all, they go hand in hand. The second element is that...
Can I just pick you up? I think Marilyn's point there was, today we don't have any capacity problems in the airspace. So isn't today the day we should be practicing all these perfect trajectories? Did I get that right, Marilyn?
Yeah, but I don't like when we oppose also capacity and environment. I have a problem with this kind of statement because when we ensure the capacity that is required, we are also doing environment because we are reducing holding or risk of extra vectoring and so on. What I mean, it's more that now, especially now that capacity is not an issue, we have more space to work on some innovative solution. It's maybe the time to implement new habits. And just to complement on what Florian was just saying about this perfect flight and the fact that we should all work together and so on. The 1st of July, the DHL Express made a perfect flight. And for doing this, there were 50 actions that have been identified from flight planning perspective to optimize the climb profiles, the descent profiles, and so on. What does it mean? It means that normally, with our space, we should be able to fly this perfect flight all the time. But it's not possible yet, and we should ask ourselves why. So to be able to fly this perfect flight, it's a matter of collaborative approach. We have all to work together in this. So in all this identification of action that needs to be done to be able to fly more perfect flight. But now, of course, it's to look at all this action and to know how we can collaborate all together in such a way that we can build back upon this perfect trajectory to make this action that have been identified an habit for the whole network. And this is the challenge.
So, Florian, I'm sorry to have interrupted you on that. Thank you, Marilyn. That's very helpful. I mean, my big concern in this is that at the moment, there's so few aircraft out there. I mean, you'd have thought Fozzie the Bear could organise the perfect flight right there now. I mean, there's nobody getting in your way. There's no capacity constraints. There's no any of those things. So Marilyn, I think, is saying that even literally on a blank slate, we still need to do 44 different things to make the perfect flight. Is that something that SESAR is looking at?
Yes, and I think this is very relevant of the situation we face. We have a system, the legacy system of air traffic management has been built on providing safety. That was its sole and only purpose. To do that, a number of constraints have been embedded into the system, into the way the system is operating. And even when we don't have the traffic, we still have a number of those constraints that have to be dealt with if we want to perform this so-called perfect flight. So to me, the whole point of how we intend to address things in the context of SESAR is somehow to redesign the system that not only it can provide safety, but it can provide as well the other elements which are relevant, and in particular, the ability for the aircraft to fly as it has been designed. I think this is a real kind of battle we have ahead of us. We'll have in the skies more and more performing aircraft. We shouldn't make them fly stupid trajectories. Otherwise, this is a waste of money, a waste of resources, and a waste for the environment. And this is really what we have to change in terms of mindset, I think, within the domain as well. It is to rebuild the system around this optimal trajectory instead of trying to accommodate them into an old-fashioned system.
Okay, I think, thank you. There are two interesting strands there, I think. I mean, the first...
We don't hear you.
Someone muted me. I'm afraid I was about to say something. The first thing is in your frequently used example of the dishwasher, which I find fascinating in part for what it describes to me about your home life. But leave that aside for a moment. We are making increasingly sophisticated aircraft, and I'm sure Mark will agree with me, and Mark, I'll come to you in a moment on this, but we're making increasingly sophisticated aircraft. And our mutual friend Neil Planzer would say we're up to generation 7 in the airframe, but we're only up to generation 3 in ATM. To what extent should we be letting the aircraft lead the way in all of this? Question for you, Florian, and then for you, Mark, if I may.
Sorry, I was muted this time.
Yeah, someone's
yeah. No, just I think it has to go hand in hand. To me, having very sophisticated aircraft that cannot fly the way they've been designed to fly is useless. On the other hand, having perfect or the ability to provide perfect trajectory without getting the relevant information for the aircraft on what and how it can fly is equally useless. So the two have to go hand in hand. If we want to generate value. I don't think there is any other option. And to me, this is as well the value of the commitment of Airbus in a program like SESAR, which is actually to benefit from the developments that are happening on board of the aircraft, so that we stop doing stupid things as we've been doing in the past because we didn't have the technology. Stupid things like, let's try to guess how the aircraft is going to fly, when actually this is embedded into the FMS and we just need to get the information out of it.
Well, indeed, thank you. And Mark, to you, isn't that exactly the point? I mean, the airframe can do most of this controlling, I think, or self-controlling, self-separating to some extent. I'm not suggesting gate to gate, but certainly there are whole phases where the airframe is already able to do it. What's Airbus's position on putting the airframe further forward in terms of the ATM procedures?
This is exactly the objective of the 4-day trajectory. Not only we are investing in technology to improve the performance of the aircraft, and today the performance of one aircraft of the last duration is impressive. 2 liters fuel burn per passengers for 100 kilometers. The performance of your car, and you can imagine the performance of our aircraft today. And with the SkyWAS platform, the digital platform, we are able to measure for all flights in the world the exact performance and how the profile, the engines, regime, and so is impacting the fuel and the CO2 emissions, and to adapt and to improve again and again to really find the optimized flight with the less emission possible. So we have the tool from the airborne to do so. And then, of course, we need this kind of freedom to fly according to the best flight profile, to the most direct route. And for this, we think that the 4D trajectory is a solution, which means introduce the link between the ground and the board, the airborne systems. You know, we have a lot of intelligence on the ground with all the development in the ATM system, and a lot of intelligence and capacity on the airborne system. If we put together the two, then we can develop a new ATM system, which is much more powerful, much more efficient. And this is all the story of, I think, of the SESAR JU and the SESAR program and the modernization of ATM. Because, and then first we created a data link to allow this link between the aircraft system and the ground and to exchange data. Now we need to put the processes on this. We have the tool, the basic tool, we have the intelligence, then we need really to integrate. And the first thing is to develop in the STM system the capability to receive the flight plan. They will give to the ATM system the right profile, integrate it in the system, and then fly together the best possible trajectory. And then you will see really it will improve the performance of the global ATM system. It will improve also capacity because we will have better prevision of the traffic, better prediction of the potential trajectory conflicts and so on. And at the same time, it will improve the efficiency of each individual flight. We know that it needs a harmonization of the system on the ground, software developments and so on. But we do hope that now we will be closer and closer to this new way of managing ATM. Nobody is leading the other, but we interfaces the two systems so that we can have the best possible intelligence and then implement the right solution for dealing with capacity and safety capacity and environment, which for us should be a priority in the ATM system.
But all this talk of integration and harmonisation, that's all terrific, and who doesn't vote for harmonisation, of course. But does any one person, does any one organisation have the job of being responsible for this sort of integration? Marilyn, is that something that Eurocontrol does?
We, for sure, have a role to play in this, of course. And but I would like to come back to what Mark was saying about the future and what has to be done and so on, because it's something that I would like also to discuss. I think that we need more than ever research and innovation. It's why projects like the 4D trajectory, of course, and all SESAR program is the key now. Because if we really want to change, and as I explained before, we really need to change because the expectations are higher than before. So we really need to move. It's not an option to say we continue as before the COVID. It's not possible. We can't do this anymore. So we have to move forward. But the problem we have now, it's how to measure this improvement. Because when I hear all the discussion around aviation sustainability and the amount of benefits we could have and so on, it sounds like as if nothing has been done so far. But a lot of improvement have been done until now. But we need to do more. But the problem we have is to demonstrate what has been done. And it's the problem also with the new technology. With the new technology and digitalization or automation and so on, we need to show how this new technology contribute to environmental improvement. And for doing this, we need more research also on new metrics, new way to measure the improvement, on machine learning, artificial intelligence, and so on. So we need new development to be able to show that these new technology are really going to improve. And it's something that I miss now. And I think that Eurocontrol has a role to play in this, in the airspace architecture study, in the work we are doing with SESAR. So in SESAR 3, for instance, in the new agenda, we plan to work on this new matrix, new dashboard, to be able to better measure the environmental improvement of this new technology, which I think is really important if we want to better convince the public.
Two issues arise from that, thank you, or three actually. The first one is, a lot of that stuff that you're talking about, work being done on automation and so on, aren't our friends on the ground doing a lot of that? I mean, isn't there a lot of stuff around the motor cars and other automation and AI stuff that we could be learning from? But my second point is, Florian, the same question to you as to Mary Lynn. Whose job is it to do this integration? And then my third question is, how do we tell the world? I mean, it's one thing to be terrific, but Marilyn's point, I think, is 100% correct, that we're losing the battle from a societal perspective, from a society perspective. So how do we convince people?
By being all together. It's really the key message now. We are sharing this responsibility all together. So we really need to work together. It's not only SESAR or Eurocontrol or One Airport or Airbus. It's all together. It's the whole aviation industry that should work together to face this challenge, because we need the expertise of every single stakeholder. And it's by working all together with this new technology that we will be able to face and convince.
I still think in that we need a leader, frankly. I mean, it's one thing to bring everyone into the tent, but someone's got to organise the election, I think. Florian, do you agree with that, or do you think that we can just do it peace, love, brown rice and kerosene?
I'm sorry, I'm going to disappoint you, Andrew. I'm not sure there is a need of a leader per se. I think what we need is for aviation to lead it. And let me explain what I mean. I mean, we have always good excuses of not doing things, and we do see that all the time in the discussion between stakeholders. It is for the institution to show the way. It is for the operating stakeholders to invest. It is for the Commission to come up with a new piece of regulation. And everybody is waiting for someone else. And I don't think this is a mature attitude. That's not, by the way, what Airbus is doing. I mean, Airbus is clearly investing massively into this challenge, because this is the future of aviation. So I can't see why all the other actors of ATM should just wait and see. By the way, that's not what's happening. There are many good initiatives which are taking place across the European network to improve things. And I think what we need to do is to encourage, build on these initiatives, create the momentum so that it brings some kind of critical mass. To me, that's really essential that we work on that and that we provide means to do it. For instance, that's the idea in SESAR 3 of the large-scale demonstrators, to provide platforms where basically we can amplify the momentum of the early movers, including in the dimension of optimized trajectory and environmental impact. That's the first element. Second element, I think, is the sense of urgency. I don't think we have discussed that enough. But to me, the sense of urgency is really critical in ATM right now to go through this transformation for the sake of hundreds of different objectives, but primarily because of the sustainability aspects. We do need to bring that into the genes of the air traffic management system to tackle it as a top priority. And this is really where we have, I think, today a big challenge ahead of us, in particular because of the crisis, because we know the investments are going to be constraints. But if we would keep some ability to invest, I think this should be on such matters.
So, but to what extent, Florian, do you think there is an ability now to leapfrog some of the places where we're currently at and leapfrog forward and start to just bring this new technology in immediately rather than out? I mean, I realise that safety's first and all that stuff, and we've got to move very, very cautiously. But you know, there's a huge is there a huge opportunity to actually leapfrog to some of that stuff? I mean, Mark mentioned earlier data link. Well, I mean, data link, it doesn't really rank as brand new technology, does it? And then we still use radars, we still get VHF radio. I mean, is there some way we could go forward substantially in this down period, for want of a better expression? I mean, Marilyn before said we should build back better. Isn't this the way we do it? Question for you.
Okay, so I can pick on it, and then of course. So to me, one of the elements that you've highlighted is that we can actually probably learn from other domains. I don't think we are so specific in ATM that we have to reinvent the wheel on anything that we do. And the data link is a good example of a total failure whereby we have tried to mimic what the teleco industry is doing with investment in research and development that has nothing to do on what we can afford in aviation. The result of it is that 20 years after its invention, we don't yet have data link fully deployed and implemented, and that this technology is outdated by the time it will actually be operated. So we have to learn from outside. One of the domains where we are learning a lot is the drone domain. And this is where there are things which can apply to the ATM domain to a certain extent, where it's quite reassuring as well to see that the notion of trajectory is really at the core of the drone traffic management systems that are being researched and developed around the world, which shows actually that this is this very notion that we have to continue to apply and develop in the ATM domain. And by the way, this is not specific to drones. This is the same kind of tendency that you will see in robotics, in automotive industry, and so on. So we have the ability now to get what we can learn from those other domains and start to apply it to ATM with some specificities. That's true. I mean, an aircraft is flying very differently than a drone. So there are very clear specificity, including in terms of safety, but not everything is safety related either. And this is probably where we can start to do some leapfrogging with some controller tools, with some communication system. We do not have to consider them as a purely safety critical component of the system. And on that ones, we can probably do some leapfrogging in terms of technology.
Interesting. As drones move into the UAMs and those sorts of things, they do become aircraft, in fact, so the safety issues start to overlap, of course. Mark, is there some sort of technology we could use this opportunity to leapfrog forward, do you think, or do you think it's incremental all the way?
It's both. Where the story of aviation is both. You know, we need some step change, and what we are looking for, the next generation of aircraft to be green aircraft, is a step change. At the same time, this sense of urgency, what Florian is saying about the need to go faster. We also have this issue, and we decided also to implement incremental improvements in our aircraft. And so I think we need to do the same on ATM. We really need to develop new technology for the future, for a fully digital ATM, totally integrated ATM, where the aircraft are totally connected to the ground and the intelligence of the aircraft is totally integrated in the intelligence of the global system. And we need also incremental improvements. On initial 4D, we have proposed first just to transfer the flight plan coming from the aircraft to the ground so that they can start using it, not implementing immediately the 4D and so on. So I think we need both. But we need to go faster. You asked the question of the instruments. We have the technologies and we have the instruments. Even on the legal basis, I mean, we have the institution in Europe to do what we want to do. We have the Single Sky, we have the European Commission. At worldwide, we have the ICAO, and with the block upgrades, they try to move on also ATM performance and so on. So we have the instruments. Now, what is needed is to go faster. We are lacking of speed in this transformation, which means more energy, more synchronization of the efforts. But I think we have everything we need to do it. And of course, now with the climate change issue and the need to be more efficient in the future, this urgency is even higher.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very inspiring vision you outlined there of the intelligence on the aircraft being connected with the intelligence on the ground and putting it together to make the trajectory as efficient as possible, as pure as possible. So Marilyn, again, I come back to you. Is that the sort of thing that you think Eurocontrol has a role in? And if so, is it the network manager? Is it some other thing? How do we make this happen quickly?
Exactly. So on this point, I think that Eurocontrol has a major role to play, because we could help to identify the first mover, the first pioneers, to implement new technological solution. Because we would like to avoid the effect that was mentioned by Florian by saying we are going to wait, waiting for what? So that's the point. We need to find the first pioneers that are really ready to implement this new technology in such a way that we could demonstrate what are the added value of this new technology that could motivate all the others to follow. And Eurocontrol, with its central position, I think that we can help to do this. So, but of course, not alone. Together with the SESAR solution that have been developed. And so the idea is to find this good solution that could be easily implemented and to find the good places to do it. And one of the issues that we have, if we come back to PBN or to other technology like data link and so on, it's a lack of coordination. You know, we need to have a synchronized implementation of this old technology, because if we are not doing this, it's like, you know, we are waiting for the other to do it. So for PBN, for instance, of course, there are a lot of benefits to implement PBN, but if we are waiting for all aircraft to be equipped before publishing new procedure, for instance, it will take too much time. So we really need to have this coordinated approach, but also on the other side, we also need the aircraft to be correctly equipped. So it's why I insist so much about this collaborative approach. You know, we are all together in this. We need all to involve together in this, and we need now to move and to lead the way forward, to identify the first movers, the pioneers, to implement this new technological solution, to be able to communicate and to show the benefit of this solution. And I'm sure it will motivate the others to follow, of course.
So, Florian, it sounds to me as if SESAR is actually in the box seat in all this. You may not take a view that there needs to be one person in charge, but you are you're in the unique place of having Eurocontrol and Airbus and various other players inside the joint undertaking.
I think this is SESAR is an instrument from that standpoint, and it can act indeed as a kind of catalyst for such things. Just to pick on what Marilyn has said, I think one of the challenge we have to address, especially if we talk about the short to medium term, is the usage of sustainable aviation fuel. We know this is a key component in the pillars that ICAO has defined for greening aviation. We do have examples today around Europe of airlines who have taken some steps, who are making commitments in order as well to start the supply chain on sustainable aviation fuel. And this is where I believe we can team up together with those early movers to protect their trajectories, because the last thing I think we should have are such investments that are being made by airlines which are totally destroyed because then they operate inefficiently. So we need to make sure that we can secure this investment by providing an environment where they do have not only a financial but an operational benefit. And to me, this is the kind of value, yes, indeed, that SESAR can create around the notion of demonstrators, because as well it has a different and several actors around the table. I think one element maybe that is interesting to highlight from that standpoint is that assuming we do so, how do we communicate about it? Because I do believe we do have a difficulty in aviation to communicate on those things. Mark has recalled the extremely good performance of aircrafts that we have in our skies today, and yet we continue to read either false information, but as well a perception from the public that aviation is not doing its fair share in terms of contributing to sustainability. And maybe this is because we have a very engineered way of communicating, maybe because we are not putting up front the right arguments. I don't know, but I think there is a work that needs to be done on that, because even if we do the best work in the context of SESAR, at the end of the day, we need to make sure it's reaching the public, the citizens, the passengers, the politicians, in the right way. Today, we have debates all over the place in Europe to replace air routes by rail without questioning how the electricity or where the electricity is coming from to move the trains around. So this shows really we have something to address, including in terms of communication, once we are doing the right things.
To me, Florian, I think the problem is we don't use the dishwasher analogy enough, because a dishwasher is something everybody understands, and we could get right into it. We're almost out of time. I've got one question left for the three of you, the same question for all three. Marilyn before said what we need to do is build back better. If I said to you, what is the one thing that you think would give us this sort of leapfrogging step change, to use your word, Mark, what is the game changer tech that we could do that would make which would really help with the sustainability? Mark, Marilyn, and then you, Florian, for the last word. If I could ask you, Mark, please.
Yes. For me, I would say stay innovative. Aviation has been built on our capability of being innovative. The technology is progressing. We think that tomorrow we will be able to fly with no or very few emissions, to really fly with no impact on the environment. This is something we have to do in the next decades to reach the climate change issue. And we do believe that we are able to do this. On the 4 pillars, technology, sustainable aviation fuel, MBM, and also ATM. And on ATM, I think we really need to stay innovative. You know, what we have said aujourd'hui is that we are innovative and we are able to change things. So let's do things according to what we have already developed, demonstrated in SESAR JU, but also in other programs as NextGen and so on. You know, we have developed this concept of fellow flight over the Atlantic, to fly information, to use the wake of the previous aircraft to save something like more than 5% emissions. This is innovative, and we can see that this is a kind of thing that can really very quickly change and bring something. And step by step, I think we will be successful.
Innovative, of course, if you discount the geese who have been doing it for millions of years, I suppose. But yeah, and I can only assume that having the aircraft fly in formation like that would present a pretty amazing ATM challenge as well. So I agree, it's completely innovative and really quite fascinating. Marilyn, what about you? What is the game changer? What is it that will make all the difference, do you think?
Well, according to me, it's really to ensure a holistic and collaborative approach for the future. So I think I have explained the complexity regarding sustainability. So there is no simple and magic solution to solve all the issues, but we have to we have to look, you know, with a more holistic approach at the complexity of the entire problem to find the best option to move forward. So it's and it's also a matter of collaboration. It's why we have to work all together on this. And just to finish on this, because I see some comments in the chat, but indeed we have to better also, and it's why I'm speaking about a holistic approach. We have to demonstrate the benefit of what we are doing on the environment. So we really need to develop new metrics, new way of communicating what the aviation sector is doing if we really want to convince that we are part of the sustainable mobility solution.
Thank you. Florian?
Well, I can only agree to what has been said, so I will try to bring something maybe a bit different. Innovation, the need to work all the system together, I think are absolutely necessary. And this is where as well we have a huge potential. I mean, we measure, for instance, just to pick up on what Marine said, the trajectory according to the orthodromy considered as the optimal trajectory, while we know that an aircraft flying against or with the winds make a big difference in terms of carbon footprint, for instance. So these are things that definitely will have to be there. In my view, what we need to bring as well is the political will. I think that we have to leverage on the states, on the politicians, the challenge that we have in terms of climate change, the challenge we have in terms of sustainability for aviation, and to use these forces to change the system and to accelerate the pace. And if I had maybe to add one idea onto this, it will be to change the definition of ATM at ICAO level. As you know, ATM is about safety in the definition of ICAO. It's about efficiency as well in terms of effective flows of traffic. it is not about environment. And I believe if we will take this fight maybe to change that and to use it as a leverage with the politicians, with the states to say, look, ATM, yes, it's about safety, of course, but it is equally about sustainability of aviation to make sure that we design the system to cope with the optimal trajectory. Then maybe we will trigger something different in terms of stopping doing stupid things, as we can see sometimes with trajectory in our skies.
I always love hearing optimists talk about stopping doing stupid things and then using the word ICAO in the same sentence. But, ladies and gentlemen, that was an editorial. We have run out of time, but I think it's been a really fascinating conversation, and I hope you think so too. Thank you for everybody with the comments on the side there. I tried to bring in as many of those as I could. Please join me in virtually thanking Marilyn, Mark and Florian for today's conversation. We'll be back very soon with our third session in this series, and thank you very much for your attendance today. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Oh, bye.